Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast with KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian and Najee Moye.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Niko Tamurian alongside Najee Moye. Najee, how you doing, man?
Niko, another day, another week, another time where we're just happy to be here. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm good, and I'm going to cut right to the chase here. I'm in a fantastic mood because, first of all, we've got Hawks and Commanders, Lumen Field, 125 Sunday. You know, the Seahawks are still technically tied for first place in the NFC West. I say technically because the Niners would have the tiebreaker, but one of my all-time best buddies, I love this guy. He's joining us. He's the sports director at WJLA in DC, covering the Commanders every step of the way. He knows Ron Rivera, the head coach, very well. Let's bring him up. Scott Abraham, one of my favorite people out there. Scott, how you doing, man?
What's up, Scott?
What's up, guys? Niko, we go way back, Central New York buddies. You gotta preface that.
We do, yes. And Scott and I both grew up in upstate New York, and You're a Utica guy, right?
Yep, Utica and near Syracuse, and we kind of crossed paths when I was in Syracuse, so we go way back. So it's always great to be with you.
Oh, my God. It's always great to be with you. And certainly one of my closest friends in this business all the years back and even beyond the business. And, you know, I love you. So, yeah, I just want to, I mean, it's a cool opportunity that we get the Seattle and DC connection here. I just want to talk with you first and foremost about this Commanders team because you know them better than most, and especially most out here in the Pacific Northwest. From a distance, I see a team that's, you know, looked really nice at times and then also not so nice at times and has made some interesting trades along the way. Before we get into anything specific, just what can you tell us? What is the story so far anyway of the 2023 Commanders?
Yeah, a little Jekyll and Hyde to the Washington Commanders. You know, sometimes they look great, sometimes not so great, as you mentioned. They have a promising young quarterback in Sam Howell, who's really made some serious strides this season. He became the starter this year, and, you know, it's a roller coaster for a second-year pro, but he passes the eye test, and I think for Washington and their fan base, they can hold on to the fact that probably Sam Howell is the closest thing they have to a franchise-type quarterback in a number of years. So that's the positive there. Then the other side, at the trade deadline last week, they traded two of their best defensive players, one of the faces of the franchise, or was supposed to be a face of the franchise, Chase Young and Montez Sweat. Chase Young was a little bit of a surprise, hometown guy, supposed to be that storybook type ending where he helps lead his local team back to prominence. It didn't work out. They shipped him to San Francisco, maybe a little bit of a shock to that locker room. And then, of course, Montez Sweat went to the Bears and they just signed a massive contract extension. So a lot of young players having to fill in some pretty big roles on defense. And they're feeling pretty good because even with that, they're only a game out of the NFC wildcard picture right now. Seattle is a team they're chasing. And kind of our storyline this week was to have a vision, to have a path to maybe get to the playoffs. They got to somehow go out to the Pacific Northwest and beat Seattle. Because if they beat Seattle, the whole narrative and the whole kind of demeanor changes because they'll get to the 500 mark with the Giants coming up on deck. So this is a huge swing game for Washington because I feel like if they can beat Seattle, watch out. If they lose, they're probably going to miss the playoffs, in my opinion.
Well, Scott, you just brought up the Giants. We just met. Hi, by the way. I'm a huge Giants fan.
Okay.
I want to ask you brought up Montez Sweat and Chase Young. You know, the defensive line for the Commanders will look a lot different going forward. I mean, what should the Hawks prepare for if they don't have, you know, Sweat or Young to chase after Geno?
So you got to watch out for the two guys inside, Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. Those guys are from Alabama. They've known each other for a number of years, did their thing in Bama, and now they're doing their thing together with Washington. And they're both signed long-term, so they're really big foundational pieces for the defense. They can clog up the middle, stop the run, get to the quarterback. Now on the edge, filling in Chase Young and Montez Sweat are two young players. One is Casey Toohill, and the other is James Smith-Williams. Guys that are going to get their opportunity to try to prove that they belong in the National Football League. You didn't really notice a big drop-off against the New England Patriots last week Patriots offense, not like Seattle, in my opinion. And I think Seattle is going to be very focused and determined, especially offensively, after getting mollywopped in Baltimore. So I think if there's going to be any sort of drop-off or deficiency, losing a Chase Young or a Montez Sweat, it's going to show up against the Seahawks on Sunday.
Mollywopped is one of my favorite words of all time.
I was going to say, I love that word,
I love that
Scott.
word. It's a $10 word right there.
I love it. And Scott, you bring up a great point in Baltimore. Obviously, you're just a stone's throw from there as well.
Yep.
That was just a wild game from a standpoint of that was just not the Seahawks we'd seen. I mean, they don't get blown out. It was the second worst loss by margin of victory in Pete Carroll's entire, 13 years in Seattle. So it was just crazy. Curious how much you saw that. And is that give you, as you watch that game, maybe in preparation for seeing the Hawks play the Commanders this week, does that give you any indication of what we might see? Not saying the Commanders are going to do that or anything like that, but from a standpoint of the Seahawks suddenly have a bit of a turnover bug. And is there an opportunity for the Commanders to maybe take advantage of that?
I did not see a single play from the Seattle-Baltimore game, just to be completely honest. But I did see the Ravens kind of ran wild on them in terms of running the football. And I think that's going to be a point of emphasis for Washington in terms of getting Brian Robinson Jr., Antonio Gibson involved, getting the kind of the pressure off Sam Howell, because he's going into a hostile environment. We talked about it in the locker room the other day about the 12th man, the noise, the volume, and they're already preparing for this because they know it could be a lot to take in for a young quarterback. I am concerned about the big-bodied receiver and a DK Metcalf. So Washington has a very young quarterback, a rookie cornerback named Emmanuel Forbes, and he has been eaten alive by another big-bodied receiver named A.J. Brown twice. They played the Eagles, and he was just absolutely manhandled. So if I'm Seattle, I am going to try to find that matchup every single time. DK Metcalf, big-bodied, up against an Emmanuel Forbes, rookie cornerback, very lean and slender. That's a concern I have. In terms of how Seattle should attack offensively, I think Washington is very susceptible through the air, and I think Geno Smith, who didn't have a relatively great game against Baltimore, a little bit of the turnover bug, as you mentioned, take care of the football, push the ball downfield, take your shots against a Washington secondary that's been spotty at times. So I just think this is a bad spot for Washington because of the fact that Seattle just got absolutely destroyed against Baltimore. So Washington's had their issues defensively this year, and I'm a little concerned about the matchup against the Seahawks offense.
You just made a lot of Seattle Seahawks fantasy owners of DK Metcalf and maybe even Tyler Lockett and Geno Smith very happy just now.
Yeah.
You mentioned that this could be a game that the Commanders really need to win to push themselves to 500. You also mentioned them trading away two pretty big pieces to their defense. Is this a game that I don't know? Is this maybe like a save the Commanders season type game?
I think it's a turning point game. I think I would call it like a swing game because the narrative changes because you have the Giants coming up next if you're a Washington fan, and that's a game you should win if you have a Tommy DeVito, go Syracuse, as the quarterback for the New York Giants. Seattle is just that swing game. They're a team they're chasing in the wild card standings. Washington is 4-5. And if they somehow can go out to the Pacific Northwest and pick up back-to-back road wins, win at New England, then win at Seattle, that could change the whole narrative of their season because they could be 6-5, beat Seattle, beat the Giants. Then you got Dallas on Thanksgiving Day, and anything can happen in a rivalry game. One game at a time, but they understand this is a big game if they have any hopes of making the playoffs. So I think Washington's going to come with a very good effort, but I also think Seattle's going to be a little extra hungry because of that performance against Baltimore.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Scott. And I think the same thing goes for Seattle as well. This is a swing game because you don't want one loss to turn into two. And this is a team, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, that has the same record as the Niners atop the NFC West. But if you lose, okay, now you're talking about a couple losses in a row and you're 5-4. But if you win, a big difference. I know it's one game, but there's a big difference between 6-3 and 5-4. Right. And then the psyche of, okay, you lost 37-3, then you lost at home in a game. The one thing that concerns me, and this is just me kind of voicing off the top of my head here, is that, yes, even before the Baltimore game, the Hawks won their last two games. They beat the Browns, they beat the Cardinals, but they were games where they beat Arizona, 2010. They beat the Browns 24-20. They were games that were super close because they've been turning the ball over. And to Geno Smith's point, he, in the first 4 games, had 1 interception. In the last 4, he's had 6. And that's what he was so good last year when he was a Pro Bowler, when he was protecting the football and he wasn't turning it over. Pete Carroll doesn't need him to be bombing the ball over the field like Russell Wilson was at points in his career. He just needs him to find his guys, move the ball, let the running game do its thing. And that hasn't happened. So I feel like if you lose this one, if the turnovers rear their ugly head again, if the running game for the Seahawks can't get going, or if the Commanders' running game runs wild like the Ravens did, from the Seahawks perspective, you're talking about a case where, okay, we've gone from slightly concerned and nervous to maybe even panicked at this point. So I wanted to piggyback on that because I really think it resonated with me, all the stuff you were saying about the Commanders, this being a swing game, because kind of in the other way, where, okay, if the Seahawks win this game, things are okay. Things are on the path that fans have thought they were for the last maybe month or two. But who
does Seattle have after Washington?
Yeah, here's the thing about that. So after you've got the Commanders, you're playing at the Rams, who beat you in week 1. And then you've got the Niners here in town on Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Then you've got the Cowboys the following Thursday. Then the Niners come back here. And then it's the Eagles. So you've got
so if you're looking at the schedule, they got to beat Washington and the Rams, because that's a tough gauntlet of San Francisco, Cowboys, then San Francisco again.
Yeah, you're talking Rams, Niners, Cowboys, Niners, Eagles in the next 5 after the Commanders game.
Wow. Yeah, so they got to get fat and happy against Washington and the Rams, because that gauntlet after the Rams game, that's tough. So I think this could be a really good spot for a get-right game for Seattle.
And that's the point I'm making. If you lose this game, anything can happen. It's the NFL. We get all the cliches, but man, is your reaction said it all to that stretch. I mean, that is a brutal stretch of games. And so that's what makes this game even more important. Yes, the win is huge, but if you lose, you can almost see things you don't want it to happen from here.
And I think probably the pressure is going to be more on Seattle, because Washington, in a sense, is kind of playing with house money. They traded it away. They were sellers, right? They were sellers at the trade deadline. So they may go in there with a little mentality of, we have really nothing to lose. Not a lot of people expect us to be in the playoff mix. Seattle may have a little sense of urgency because they got destroyed by Baltimore and they know what the schedule is like down the pike. So I think the pressure, and if it's a tight game and turnovers become a factor, Washington could have a really good chance of knocking you off, because just the sense of urgency from Seattle, knowing they have to probably get this win as well.
Scott, do you see a close game? I mean, we kind of do a bit of a score prediction here. I mean,
do we know the spread? What's the spread? Is it 6.5, 7?
6.5. What are you thinking here? Not that we condone betting on this.
I would, if I was a betting man, maybe sometimes I might bet on the Kraken. Niko knows that.
Yes,
I do. I would probably lay the 6.5. So I think Seattle would cover. I think Seattle would win by a touchdown. If I were, to bet this game.
I think Seattle wins. I don't think they cover, though. I've seen them play some teams way too tight. Listen, I'm not telling you not to bet them in your, local sports book. We don't have mobile betting in Washington. I don't know how it is in DC.
You're missing out.
I've been told. Well, you can go to many of the sports books.
I just send you my Kraken bet slips. That's all I do now. I just said, hey, go Kraken.
We enjoy that. I enjoy that. It's a lot of fun for me. Yeah, we have to go to Snoqualmie or some of the sports books nearby. I've seen this Seahawks team. They seem to grind it out and get the wins. Like I mentioned, they, against the Browns, they won 24-20. That was getting they were down 2017, less than 2 minutes to go, by a PJ Walker led team. And they got a timely interception on a batted pass and scored with, about a minute to go, or 38 seconds to go, to win that game. The week before, they beat Arizona by 10. It should have been a lot more. My point in that, saying all that again, is that they've been playing teams really tight, even when it shouldn't have been tight. So that's why I think they're going to win. But I don't think they cover 6.5. I
What's
think it's
what's the Seattle defense like? I don't know too much about the Hawks defense.
We got a bunch of great cornerbacks. We got Witherspoon, who's a rookie, who's also very, very good. Tariq Woolen. But the thing is, I mean, Jahad Dotson, Scary Terry on you guys' side, that's the matchup that I want to see. Definitely. Sam Howell, I've been watching Sam Howell since he was at UNC, and I'm like, he can sling it.
He's a gunslinger. Yep. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that touchdown pass he threw to Jahad Dotson in the New England game, but it was just a teardrop drop in the bucket, deep bomb. It was beautiful. So, it was supposed to be a reunion game for Cody Barton. He's on injured reserve. He was, he's Washington. He was one of Washington's big free agent pickups, but he won't be playing in his kind of reunion game.
I always remember Cody Barton was my live guest after they beat Russell Wilson and the Broncos in week 1. That was a fun time. Yeah. I will say, Scott, I'm really bullish on this defense. I think they're only going to get better as the year goes on. Now, you may see the Ravens game, be like, what the heck is this guy talking about? But there's some really, really bright young talent out there. Najee mentioned Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon, two guys that are first and second year players. And then you've got some vets like the great Bobby Wagner's out there.
Can you sack the quarterback? Can you get after the quarterback? I ask this because Sam Howell is the most sacked quarterback in the National Football League. He's on track to break the single season record for the most sacks. It's gotten better the last 2 games, but the Washington offensive line has been very susceptible, not good in pass blocking. Sam Howell has an issue of holding on to the ball too long. So if your front, without having the blitz, can get home, it's going to be a long day for Sam Howell in Washington.
Yeah, and they've been doing that a little bit better. They got an NFC East guy in there, and Leonard Williams they traded for from the Giants at the deadline. One thing to watch for your own purposes, the Seahawks will like to occasionally send a guy like Jamal Adams or Devin Witherspoon on a nickel safety type blitz. Watch for that occasionally because they mix it in at the most unexpected time, and it usually yields some pretty good results. Now, don't get me wrong, like the linebackers and the edge rushers like Moye, second-year guys, really been getting to the quarterback. He's got a sack in 6 straight games, which is a team record at that point. So they get there in more traditional means. But watch some of those secondary guys. They fly to the backfield, and oftentimes they can get a big sack, and they're both big hitters, but also can force some turnovers there. So that's something I would watch if you're you watching the game from the Commanders' perspective Sunday. But that I think will be a big thing. I like this defense and how they are that nice blend of vets and young guys. But I think you hit the nail on the head. If they can get that pressure, which I think they can. They've shown the track record of doing that most of the year. That could be a difference maker in this game. And certainly for a defense that's continually improved and pretty rock solid this year, that might be the difference. I'm going to go with, I think it's going to be something like a 20-17 type game or 21-16 type deal, something along those lines.
What's the weather going to be like on Sunday in Seattle?
Rainy. It'll be rainy here for the next 5 months.
Yeah. So is it going to be like downpour?
Not downpour, but I would
it's got the potential. It's a few days out. It's going to be raining. Like there's like 100% chance of rain. How that come, if that's going to be heavy rain or if it's going to be the patented Pacific Northwest misty type stuff off Elliott Bay and Puget Sound, that remains to be seen. But it's going to be raining. I can promise you that much.
Who can run the ball better if it's going to be kind of like a mutter?
If you asked me a few weeks ago, I would have said the Hawks, but their run game has struggled the last couple weeks.
I was just going to mention, Brian Robinson Jr. and, the Commanders have a very good running tandem, so, I mean,
and I don't think they use it enough, Najee. Like, I think they get pass happy with Eric Bieniemy. As you know, Eric Bieniemy came over from Kansas City. He's the new offensive coordinator for Washington. I think sometimes he tries to make Sam Howell into Patrick Mahomes, and that's not the case. So they get pass happy, and that run-pass balance has been a big topic of discussion on sports radio and press conferences. And I think they get away from it too much. I would like to see more balance. So Brian Robinson Jr., he's a between the tackles type runner. Antonio Gibson, he's a Swiss Army knife, can line him up in the slot, can line him up in the backfield, good pass catching running back. So it could be a game where you rely on a Brian Robinson Jr. to grind out some yards in the rain.
You know, you mentioned that, Zach Charbonnet also, I think also this could be like, when you mentioned the mutter, I think this would definitely be a slugfest of a game. I'm thinking score wise 14-10.
I wish it was a mutter. I wish they had natural grass down there instead of field turf. Sidebar.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yeah. I mean, I think, so if I was going to score prediction, give me Hawks 24 to 24-14.
I think we're all on the same wavelength here.
Yeah.
Scotty, how do we do this? Do I send you some Seattle coffee if the Commanders win? Do I get some crab cakes if they're
I don't know. I send you some Old Bay or something, or some.
We'll take that.
We need a little friendly wager here. I don't know. Does Seattle have a famous dessert?
Famous dessert. The seafood's famous here. I don't think I can ship some salmon across the country though. The coffee is the big thing here.
Yeah, I'm not a coffee drinker.
Neither am I though.
Okay. Send me coffee.
We like our Diet Cokes. We talk about this in our drive.
We love our Diet Cokes here. Where's my? I don't
have mine.
I forgot.
I also love Diet Cokes too. I don't have.
Yeah.
I'll send you some Kraken gear. How about that?
Yeah, just send me some winners. I need some Kraken winners. Even though I'm betting against them against Colorado. Sorry.
There's nothing wrong with that. Well, you know what, Scott? We said it off the top. You're my guy. We go way back. Loved having you on. Love you, man. And I really appreciate your insight on this game. It's a big one, as we mentioned, for both sides. So we really appreciate your insight, my friend.
Yeah, and Scott,
love you, buddy. Nice meeting you, Najee.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about beating the Giants. Believe me, as a Giants fan, you guys should have no trouble at all. Believe me.
We'll see. Any given Sunday, as they say, fellas.
That's true.
Amen to that.
Favorite football movie.
Scott Abraham, sports director at WJLA in DC. We appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So I've mentioned it a few times in that Scott is just one of the best people I know. He's fantastic.
I like Scott.
He's a great guy. He and I go way back too, as we mentioned. So what's cool about this game is, a couple years ago, the Commanders and Seahawks played, and when they played the Ravens, we can kind of talk a little bit about, hey, what can we expect from this game? What can we expect from this? And he's never steered me wrong. So I think that we come out of that conversation kind of expecting a closer game. I think all three of our predictions, something like that can happen. A Hawks close win seems to be the thing. He seems to think from, seeing the Commanders up close and personal that it could be more of a, maybe a little bit more margin of victory for Seattle. We'll see how it goes. They are 6.5-point favorites.
That's a lot of points.
I mean, I want to bring up, we did a poll. Before I do that though, something he said stood out to me, Najee. I want to get your take on it.
Sure.
He mentioned the pressuring the quarterback, because Sam Howell was the most sacked in the league. And we have something going on where we've seen Moye get 6 games with a sack. We've seen guys like Jordan Brooks get home and Bobby. And I think I said that to him a minute ago. I really think that's a game changer. How do you feel about that?
I think it's a game changer, but in games like this, I mentioned, the receivers for the Commanders, and you also mentioned that sometimes the Hawks like to bring Jamal Adams or a Rick Willen off the edge, the speed guy. I almost feel like that may not be, it will be a thing, but it may not be as prevalent this weekend because you have the speed of Jahad Dodson from Penn State on the outside, Scary Terry McLaurin also, and I mentioned Sam Howell. I watch a lot of college football, as you know, but I know that this guy can throw the ball like 70 yards. This guy is and he's a bit like a Brett Favre. He can definitely, move around a bunch, but he can definitely make some extra mistakes. But to your point, I believe that guys like Big Cat, if guys like Boye Mafe, and the guys are on the front 4 or front 3 and the linebackers 2 can get to him, I think they could be completely fine.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to add to that. I think you kind of nailed it with the head on.
I just don't see a lot of extra.
I
just don't see a rogue hand just show up out of nowhere. I just don't see a lot of cornerback blitzes or any safety blitzes because of the speed on the outside for the Commanders.
Yeah.
But also, I have a lot of I don't want to say I know a lot about Commanders. I don't know nearly as much as Scott, but as a Giants fan, I see him twice a year. We see him twice a year, and I'm a little triggered with this matchup, honestly.
Hey, speaking of triggered, maybe that's not the right word for it, but we saw that tough Seahawks loss 37-3.
Yeah.
Second worst, as I mentioned a moment ago, in the Pete Carroll era by margin of victory. We did a poll. I want to see if you're fair or foul. If you're a loyal watcher, listener of this segment, it used to be hot or cold. First of all, thank you.
Yes.
We used to call it hot or cold, but now we're calling it fair or foul because there was confusion between me and you Like, wait,
Yeah.
is hot good or is hot bad? I don't
like
know.
being cold sometimes.
Yeah.
I like
So
putting on
fair
a
foul
jacket.
is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Fair ball is good. Foul is not unless it's pushing on defense, but we're going to say we're on offense.
Right.
But we brought this poll to you. And, when it talks about the state of the Seahawks, is it time to be nervous? And leading that poll, you see the numbers if you're watching us on YouTube. The winner, fairly certain was nervous. But then it was a close battle between panicked, unsure, and confident they'll be fine. Fair or foul? Are you nervous about the Seahawks right now?
I'm not nervous or panicked.
So foul.
Yeah,
that's a foul ball.
Definitely,
It's not
definitely a foul ball. It's definitely not. It's definitely not. It's definitely not in play. Look, here's the thing, guys. The Ravens last week. The Ravens are a Super Bowl caliber team. They've been that for a long time. That core that they have with with Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson has only gotten better on offense and on defense. They sacked the quarterback more than any other team in the league. So it's no surprise that they would do that to the Seahawks. You imagine the Seahawks would put up more than 3 points. Alas, they only put up 3 points. That being said, you have to have confidence in a Pete Carroll-led team. There's no reason why we shouldn't. Second thing is, Pete Carroll is a fantastic coach, and there's no way there's going to be 2 stinkers back to back. The Commanders are a little bit worse. Sorry, Scott, a lot worse than the Ravens. And at the same time, I just don't see it happening. I have the confidence that the Hawks will eventually be fine, mostly because they're at the top of their division right now with the Niners. So it may say more. That may say more about the Niners than the Seahawks right now, but it's good to be number one, at least for the time being.
Yeah, I'm going to go foul on that as well. I am not nervous or panicked, which were the 2 top results in that poll. Am I concerned by the turnovers? I mentioned that stat of Geno throwing 1 interception in the first 4 and then 6 in the most previous 4. Of course you're concerned. Pete Carroll said he's concerned. Do I think it's time to be panicked or be nervous? No. I think if you lose this Saturday, you move me to nervous. I think if you lose something like 3 or 4 in a row, then I'm panicked.
Right.
But 1 loss to a really good Ravens team, even if it was ugly in every way, you're not going to panic me on that. You're not even going to make me nervous on that. Scott said it best. NFL, any given Sunday, anything can happen. They just got hit in the mouth. It happens.
But my thing is, Niko, the Commanders have a similar style.
True.
Scott mentioned that he wants to see more Brian Robertson Jr. He wants to see more Antonio Gibson. And I watched the game, the Hawks game, and at Uptown Brew House with a couple of friends. And every time I looked up from my cheeseburger, I saw Gus Edwards streaking across the field. And I was just like, "What is going on, man?" But so I get that, but I think the Hawks also need to be careful because. And, we mentioned games that the Hawks can get run on a lot. I don't want to bring up this memory for Hawks fans last year. Do you remember the Raiders game last year?
Yes. Josh Jacobs, 86-yarder in overtime to win it.
And
I was right on the sideline during that. I'm like, oh, gosh, is he gone?
Yeah, and that wasn't his first. He ran for a lot of yards. I'm not saying they're susceptible, but that's why they bring in guys like Leonard Williams. Okay?
Yeah.
That's why they bring in guys like Big Cat to kind of, secure the middle. But I think it'll be an exciting game. I'm excited to watch.
Yeah, I think that they made a concerted effort to improve that defense and defensive line, and I think it's getting better with every game. But this is that next test.
Yeah.
This is that test where it's like, okay, how did they improved? What is the next thing they've done? We'll see.
And they better have improved because the Niners are around the corner with 2 games against them and the Eagles.
I think, and I brought that poll to folks Sunday after they lost to the Ravens. Right now, I'm foul on that. If you lose this game and say you were run off the field, which again we talked about, I don't see that happening. But then you move me into one of those categories. But I don't think the time is there just yet. I think they do bounce back. Right now, I'm confident that they do bounce back, but that can be changed by 1 game.
Would you be nervous or would you be panicked?
If they lose on like a last second field goal, I'm nervous. If they get absolutely run off the field like the Ravens did to them, I'm panicked. I think that's what this game is. It is a swing game in every sense of the word.
Right.
And we talked about that at length with Scotty. And I think that this is, a game in November are the ones they remember. It's a college football saying, by the way. Yeah. The ones in November are the ones they remember. Yeah. Remember that.
I will.
Pun intended. That was a really bad dad joke. My son turned 2, so I'm like super dad this
He's
week.
getting them all out before his son has a chance to roll his eyes out.
Oh my God. That's probably going to happen like within the next year. But I think that, it is one we will remember these games in November, starting with a couple ways. If you spiral, which I don't think will happen, this is when the season fell off the rails.
Oh, yeah.
If you come back from this, we look at that Ravens loss as a character building one, even if it doesn't feel like it at the moment. You never want to lose. Okay, the way this team responded, because here's what they've done, Najee. Week 1, the Rams really took it to them in the second half to win 30-13. I mean, that was shocking.
Yeah.
What did they do? They won their next 3. They responded. This team responds when their backs are against the wall. They respond when they need to the most. They lost to Cincinnati. That game was so frustrating. They bounced back with a couple wins. So that's why I'm confident they're going to bounce back from this loss to the Ravens. But if they don't, if for some reason they don't, that's when I think the narrative or the overall general feeling may start to shift just a little bit.
I'm sure the Hawks are just ecstatic that they don't have to deal with a team like Cleveland or Baltimore again this week. I mean, the Commanders, yes, the Commanders are 4-5. They're one step from 500, but they are not the Ravens.
Right.
And they are not the Niners, and they are not the Eagles. And then the following week, the Rams, who also, that is another game. That's, as we mentioned, a get-back game because, the Hawks came up short against the Rams earlier this year, and definitely they're going to be ready to play. But more importantly, beat the Commanders.
Exactly.
You don't want to make Niko nervous.
So important. Don't make me nervous. So
Yeah.
important. We both think they're going to win. I don't think either of us think they're going to cover. That's a big spread, 6.5.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So there you have it. I do want to move on a little bit here because we could talk Seahawks to our blue in the face, and we will most weeks because it is such a huge time of year. It is also a huge time for year for Sounders and OL Reign, both in elimination games coming up this weekend. But I want to talk about our next fair or foul. And we're talking about the Mariners with this one because we know free agency is officially open. This is something that the ones in November, the ones I remember is a football term, but the moves the Mariners make starting in November will determine all of 2024, maybe even into November of 2024.
Yeah.
So fair or foul, Najee, the Mariners will make a major splash this offseason. Doesn't have to be Ohtani, just a major splash this offseason. Fair or foul? He's deep in thought.
I'm deep in thought because I just feel like with the Mariners, I'm just kind of like I'm saying the same thing this offseason I said last year. Please do something. Do I think they'll do something? I don't know. I think they won't. I think that'll be definitely a foul. There's no way. I don't want to say there's no way, but I mean I just don't expect it to happen. We want it to happen. I've been hoping that Shohei Ohtani, this podcast finds his way to Shohei Ohtani somehow.
Be amazing.
And
Shohei, come on the show.
Come on the show. You're just down there in Kent, man. Come on the show. And I'd love, and that would be the biggest thing, The thing is, what the Mariners need, I guess, are bats, and there's just not a lot of them, really.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it's Cody Bellinger, I just don't see a lot of major. And the pitching staff is super solid. First of all,
yeah,
there's more pitchers out there than hitters, believe me. I just don't see it happening. What do you think?
I'm gonna give you my thought. Then I'm gonna ask you a question.
Yeah,
and put you on the spot, man.
Put me on the spot.
I'm gonna say fair. But
Okay.
I'm only about 54% confident in that.
Wow.
Oh, sorry, I didn't go there, did I?
Wow.
No, but I'm only about half confident on that. And that number pops in your head nowadays.
Right.
You hit the nail on the head that there's limited bats, and certainly bats DH spot are most definitely a position of need. What makes me say I'm fair on that is the standpoint of they have to do something. They have to do something because. And Jerry DiPoto said it during that infamous end of the season press conference. And let me backtrack to the 54% thing. I really do think what DiPoto was trying to say, that they have built a team that's going to be a contender for a long time, is accurate. And it's a sound logic. The problem is you say that it's, hey, be a little more patient. And hey, the 54% thing. The 54% thing is actually fine. Like if the stats real, it's fine. It was just the delivery and that thing. So I wanted to clear that up. When I say that, it's not taking a jab at the front office. I actually think they've built something pretty good here that I think will be a playoff team again in 2024. However, I think this is a fair statement that they will make a big move this offseason because I think you have to. Yeah. You have to be. Jerry DiPoto admitted. I went on my little sidetrack rant a second ago. He admitted that they missed on those signings last year. The big move that semi-worked was Teoscar Hernandez, and he did not have a typical Teoscar year, and he's not coming back to Seattle because of it. But that was a trade. That was a trade.
But he was great, though.
Yeah, he did all right, and that's the thing. So the other signings, the Cooper, they traded for Cooper Hummel. They signed Tommy LaStella, though, and AJ Pollock. Those moves just did not work.
No.
And he admitted that. And so because of that press conference and the outcry after it, I think there is extra pressure on this organization to make the move they have to and make it something big, something that isn't, let's take a flyer on this guy. This guy could really fit into something we do. Now, that can be trade or free agency. And before I get to my take on that, I want to ask you something, Najee.
Sure.
Plethora of arms starting. And this is something Justin Hollander, the GM, said, listen, you can never have too much pitching. And he's spot on with that. Think about the injuries this past year for the Mariners. Marco Gonzalez, Robbie Ray out for the year. Emerson Hancock came out, made a start, and we thought he looked great, and then he was out for the year.
Right.
Guys like Bryce Miller and Brian Wu, if everything went according to the script, weren't supposed to be starting this year, but they did, and they did really well. So you go into 2024 with Luis Castillo, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, Brian Wu, Bryce Miller. That's 5 right there. But then you've got Marco Gonzalez. He should be ready for opening day is the latest, barring any setback. Robbie Ray is going to be out for some time still. He's not going to be able to come back until after the All-Star break. So you're talking August for Robbie. So and then Emerson Hancock should be okay too. That's 8 guys who started games for you and that have starter potential. Do you, in a world where we saw 3 guys lost for the season, and we know starting pitching is at a premium in a pitcher-friendly ballpark like T-Mobile Park, Najee, do you move one of those arms to get a proven big-time bat?
Absolutely.
You do?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Here's the thing. And you mentioned Jerry DiPoto said we're building a contender. They built a contender. They're contenders. There's a big difference between building a contender and building a winner, though.
Right.
They made the playoffs last year, but that was really about it. No playoffs from this year. We look at here's the thing. They can go in a multitude of different ways, though. We look at what the Rangers did. They won the World Series, by the way, unfortunately. And they spent a lot of money on pitching. And yes, Scherzer got hurt, DeGrom got hurt, but also the bats they added led them to the World Series. I think when you are, we have a lot of pitching, and a lot of teams need pitching. Believe me or not, believe it.
Well, the believe sign's off screen.
Believe it.
But there's a believe sign over the shoulder.
There you go. That's what I was looking at. I saw it and I was like, believe it. You need a bat. I said that at the end of last year too. And it needs to be a guy. JD Martinez is getting older, but we need some guy who maybe the opposing pitchers are afraid of.
Yeah.
Someone who's gonna, hit 280, but also hit 40 bombs and hit 131 RBIs. That's exactly what. And I'm not just talking about, and those sound like Julio Rodriguez numbers. Actually, his average was way higher. You need someone who can sit in that 5 spot and that 4 spot who can just yam the ball, first of all. Someone to be avoided. And I'm saying you're going to find an Aaron Judge out there. You're not.
What if Aaron Judge got traded to the Mariners? It's not happening. It's not happening. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and that's why I'm kind of like looking for a guy like Ohtani,
That'd be great.
Or even Bellinger, who's a great hitter, it's unfortunate that Oscar's not exactly coming back next year, but I know a lot of people who are just, for a while there, especially at the end, he was carrying the offense. It seems like,
he when he heats up, he heats up.
He heats up, and I like the Mariners pitching, and I think even if they get rid of, if they trade one guy out of the 7 that you mentioned. Oh, you mentioned Robbie Ray. I know a couple people who are Mariners fans who wouldn't mind if he no longer played for the Mariners. Believe me.
I'm foul on that, even though it's not fair to foul. I think I think when he comes back, he will be back in the form that made him a Cy Young winner. He was so good in most of 2022.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
I think but you're right. There's a lot of folks that say that.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think in a perfect world, you're able to sign. Okay, Shohei is the pipe dream. Cody Bellinger is not so much a pipe dream. It'd be great if you could sign him. JD Martinez, even those are all guys that could feasibly be signed by your team, and then you can hang on to that pitching. Imagine in some perfect world where you got 2 of those 3, it'd be amazing. But reality is that's probably not going to happen. As wonderful as it would be. It's tough for me to think about giving up one of those arms, seeing what happened in 2023.
Yeah.
But knowing that this team was offensively starved for so much of the year, that was
and you know what that does? That puts pressure on the pitchers. It puts too much pressure on the pitchers, honestly. If they have to win a game 1-0, if they have to basically throw a shutout every week. Every day. That's not going to happen.
No, how many games do they lose 2-1 and 1-0 or 3-2?
And this is the same deal that I was talking about last year. When they actually did make the playoffs, it's like, okay, you sat in the 18-inning game against Houston to lose that last game in Seattle. Trust me, I don't have to bring this up. You guys remember it. And it was a low-scoring game, but scoreless for a long time.
Sure.
So,
let me be a little more down the hypothetical wormhole here, and I don't want to go much further than this because
Niko's got his tin hat on, guys.
I would only be okay giving up one of those arms, say like a Brian Wu or Bryce Miller, and I don't like giving up either of those guys because I think they're to just step to basically Wu came from Double-A.
Yeah.
And to step in the way he and Bryce Miller did as rookies, and they just had it from day one. Scott Service raved about specifically Miller just being this guy from Texas who's like, the moment's not too big. He just came in and pitched. There's something to be said for guys who can do that. Bryce would just go in there and throw his fastball, try to hit this thing. And most often teams couldn't. So I don't even like to entertain the idea of trading for one of them. But I think it's important in the event the Mariners do that, which I don't think they will, given the past comments about the value of never having too many arms. The only scenario I'm okay with them giving up one of those arms is in a scenario where they are able to get a generational bat. Juan Soto from San Diego, rumored to be on the trading block. I'm okay. I would only be okay with it if that was part of a deal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Are you expecting any? I mean, we've been talking a lot of trades, and we know there's not a lot of bats available in free agency. If the Mariners are going to make a move, you're saying it has to come from a trade almost, right?
Well, I think that plan A is Shohei, plan B is one of or both Cody Bellinger and JD Martinez. I think they can get one of those three, right. and that would be impactful. And then to maybe the point where you can make some supplemental signings or maybe some trades for other folks that are maybe doesn't include one of your major arms. They're also going to try and sign some bullpen help. They had some they had some nice saves down the stretch after they traded Paul Sewald, but there was also a feeling of that they were figuring it out. And Andres Munoz obviously is that guy in that scenario, but we'll see how he looks, right? I think they'll try to, but regardless of what we're talking about closers, they're going to try and get some high leverage arms. I mean, Taylor Saucedo, Justin Topa worked out really well. I think they're going to try and get another bullpen arm, but obviously the primary goal and focus is unquestionably the offense.
You got to score points,
and you got to get runs on the board. And I think if you get Bellinger and or Martinez, problem solved. It's not going to be easy to get that done. Maybe one of them.
I just think back at the best teams in baseball last year, the Rangers. I just looked at their lineup, just a lot home runs everywhere. And I think a couple episodes ago, when we were talking about Mariners playoff chances, I brought up a great example of the Atlanta Braves. I mean, how many people on that team can hit? Who ended up hitting at least 10 home runs? A lot of people hit more than that, but I just don't see that now.
I like when we actually disagree on something.
Yeah, because I just
like in respectful terms.
Yes, of course. But to go back, I just don't. Here's my thing. If the Mariners go this offseason without trading for or signing a big bat, going into next year, you then have to deal with the Rangers and Astros again. Now, the Astros are also very difficult to deal with, as we know, but the Rangers are way better than them. I wouldn't say way better, but they're definitely significantly better. And I mean, I don't want to be saying the same thing, next year that I'm saying now and that I said last year. More bats, more home runs. Honestly, seriously.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. I hope they do it. Whether you're skeptical or not on that, I think either side is fair in that argument, right? Because you have last year and you have kind of the track record, but also I think there is a track record that they've made some moves before. They went out and got Robbie Ray for $100+ million in free agency a couple years ago.
Right.
The money is there, and Jerry Dipoto saying, now listen, they've got to pay some guys in arbitration, and they may try to long-term lock up some guys like Logan Gilbert and Cal Raleigh. I really would like them to do it to Cal Raleigh because I think he's just so rare at catcher. And I hope they bring back my buddy Tom Murphy to play catcher with him because Tom is a leader in every way too. So my point in saying that is there's some in-house deals they have to make, but then I think they have to. I don't think there's an alternative. No. They have to attack free agency.
Yeah, there's something they have to get over the hump.
Whether or not they do is where we're kind of
Well, and one thing is the whole Shohei Ohtani signing would be a major deal because he can pitch and hit like no one else can apparently. I mean, and then when you add that extra pitcher or the person who can pitch very well, then maybe you look at maybe just shoring up the offense even more by moving up. I've got my GM hat on right now. Don't listen to me right now. Shore up that offense by moving someone like Wu or Miller maybe. So who knows? I'm excited for the Mariners next year.
I am too.
Or this coming year. I just want to see something.
We were just a little bit in a good way spoiled where you had this stretch of a few months where you had the Seahawks, the OL Reign, the Kraken, and the Mariners all making the playoffs. And I would just like to see that again. Yeah. That's my New Year's wish for 2024, even if we still got about a month and a half left in this month.
The resolutions come early. From this
they have to. Najee, that was fun, my friend.
That was great.
Yeah, we'll join you next week at this time. Again, special shout out and thank you to Scott Abraham, sports director at WJLA, for that Commanders preview. Also, special shout out to Bill Fesh, the KOMO operations manager, who helped us bring Scott on board for this call.
Down, Bill.
I can see him in like a weird screen that you can't see. He's watching us right now.
Also, go Huskies, by the way,
and go Dogs. Utah is going to be tough. I think the Huskies win something like 28-22 or 21, something like that.
Please God, play some defense.
Yeah, I think, and I implore you to check out KOMOnews.com. We have a really heartwarming story, but born out of heartbreak, with Zion Tupuola-Fatui, lost his father, played with a heavy heart, and told me that he felt like his dad was there when he got the strip sack on Caleb Williams, because Caleb Williams is a star, and he's like, Caleb doesn't drop that ball most plays, but he did on that one. Yeah. It's really moving stuff. Make sure you check it out. Niko Sports Zone page at KOMOnews.com. Najee, thank you.
Niko, thank you.
All of you, thanks for listening and watching. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.